flies in the summer here, and it's becoming summer. The end of June, it will kick off. Are viciously annoying. So, if you see me twitching about, it's not a neurological pathology. It's flies. So, I've been reading more unqualified reservations and some other content from the New Right. I wouldn't say that Curtis Yarvin labels himself like that. I think other observers from the traditionalist camp and the New Right might give people like Curtis Yarvin labels. I don't know what he would label himself. Neo-reactionaries and all that stuff, that comes from different people. Anyway, you guys probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But it's really grabbed my attention. It's a page turner, or maybe what we might want to call a page scroller, because I'm reading most of Curtis's stuff online on his website, Unqualified Reservations. Although I did buy a book, ebook from him. A lot of it captures my imagination because perhaps of the way I grew up. So between Denver and Ireland, back and forth, I spent a lot of childhood and teen years in the summertime in Ireland. So I never missed a confession. I was an acolyte at the Catholic Church, and I never missed a communion, all that stuff. But I don't consider myself religious in any traditional sense. I'm not a mystic or anything like that. I'm not necessarily spiritual even, but I do appreciate the traditions. So if I go to Italy and look at the cathedrals and so on, it's awe-inspiring. I wonder what the people felt and thought back then. Just to kind of bring forth a pun that might come up later, it's like, it's not, we don't keep the liturgy in Latin for no reason. So some of it's inaccessible to me on certain levels. I tend to be fascinated by science, so I like the Age of Wonder where alchemists were becoming chemists and so on. I can't understand why certain kinds of progress can't be understood from a traditionalist point of view. Obviously, we all use technology and science, even if it's invisible to us, or we don't realize it, or we don't appreciate it. But there is a sense that we're losing something traditional, some qualities of traditional life, where things are more stable, where people know what the truth is. There are different kinds of truth, obviously. You know, you can talk about truth in terms of physics, in terms of certain domains in science. You can talk about truth from traditional points of view, like what's the one true Scotsman or the one true Catholic? What does it mean to be a Balinese person? You can talk within various scopes of identity. You know, Indonesian, Balinese, whatever, you know. And also time and context. So a lot of the New Right people read a lot of old books from bygone times where people were reacting to modernity and progress, and not always in a comfortable way, wondering if it was going to spawn some kind of mad future, Orwellian or whatever. Of course, they didn't know of Orwell back then, but you know what I mean. Where truth and tradition breaks down and anything goes, and you don't know where you stand anymore, who you are anymore in relationship to other people, other groups, other tribes, other nations. You can't well define yourself in terms of your tradition, your place, your time. And of course, progressiveness is just kind of baked in the human condition in the sense that we're curious creatures and we're going to continue to want to discover how things work and what we can do with them. So it took us a long time to find fire. It took us a long time to learn how to use fire in different ways. It took us a long time to figure out how to make those flaky tools and blades that we used for crafting clothing and for butchering animals and so on and so forth. It took us a long time to discover the plow once we'd settled into a more agricultural existence. And then, like Schmachtenberger said, animism went out the window, so you can kiss that tradition goodbye. What happened to the pagans when the Romans adopted the Christian lore, where the scripture is actually written by Roman authors for a Roman audience, or not? You know, all these things are up for grabs, but it took us a long time to get to the internal combustion engine and exploiting fossil fuels, and that took us a long time to get to computing with various kinds of transistors and then silicon chips and so on. And all of these innovations, including the Kepler space telescope and all these other things, has shed light on the way the world works, given us more understanding of nature, and helped us to develop even more powerful tools, CRISPR-Cas9, antibiotics, you name it, just point to anything. Things that we take for granted now that we don't even think about. It took us a long time, and it was like, is it a progress, a form of progress to have these new tools? Or is it somehow spawn of the devil? Also, progressiveness in what way? You know, towards postmodernism, where everybody has their own particular subjective truth, because the only way to fight back against the patriarchal power elite of liberalism, you know, is to, you know, what? You know, decide that sex and gender are meaningless and people just pull things out of their hat. So thinking about these things from a different point of view, sometimes I see Jordan Peterson making sense when talking about the culture wars. I don't understand his academic writings. I think it's gobbledygook, but whatever. That's a preference, I guess. I'm more of a Joseph Campbell kind of guy, but anyway. I understand that things are up in the air and confusing and people want things to be clearer. I just wonder how that happens. If you get the CEO boss man to set things straight, where do you find that guy? How did our crazy world produce a person like that, who's capable of doing those things that Mencius Moldbug seems to want the new absolute monarch to be able to do, you know, sort everything out. Do we still have the right to bear arms if we know that the king has the Navy SEALs and the Army Rangers and the Delta Force and the nuclear weapons and everything on his side? And what are we going to use those weapons for? You know, shooting the farmer next door, or fighting race wars, or what? What do we need it for? How do we push back against the absolute monarch any more than we push back against this crazy system we think is liberal democracy, when most of us know that our votes don't count and that no matter what we do or what we want, we never get it? So, you know, there are going to be these inevitable conflicts all the time moving forward, regardless of what ideology you hold, or how you're thinking about the world, or what ancient books you're reading, or what modern academic scholars you're you know, drinking Kool-Aid from. I don't see how it works. What I see is that in certain ideological camps, you can't look at climate change because it means you might have to make certain changes that you don't like. You don't have to think about biodiversity, ecology, other things. Those are all liberal issues, I guess. Birth control's good, abortion's bad, you know, I don't know. But there are hot rail issues that you can't go to. So if you're going to say there's some kind of truth in tradition, however you want to interpret that from whatever, angle, ideological proofs or whatever, metaphysics, are you ever going to yield that indeed, since we've been using fossil fuels, the planet's warming up very quickly in relation to geological time, and that we're responsible for it and something must be done, and that something has to be a global effort, but who cares? Let's just put a wall around the United States and have a white ethno-state. I'm not saying that any of these new right people believe that. Is Atlantis just a metaphor for something? A long-lost perfect past or a perfect future that could be born once we shed the yoke of liberalism and whatnot. I don't know. I just want to find out what's at the bottom of it, what they want, what they think their strategy is going to get them, what they're winning. When they defeat X, what does it mean for people in general? I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't like the mixing of the races, climate change isn't going to help Europe much, because people in less fortunate parts of the world, if they don't have the technology and the means to defend themselves from a rapidly changing climate, they're going to want to go somewhere. And it's probably going to be up north. And then what are you going to do to protect your 23andMe identity? I don't know. You still have big caravans of migrants moving towards the US border, but you don't want to talk to the Central American states. You don't want to address structural and economic issues. You don't want to help them help themselves, except in kind of fake philanthropic or NGO kind of ways. So at the end of the day, what's going to come of it all? And each generation, you hear people talking about Generation X and all these generations. Well, what's the next generation going to want? What are they going to be concerned with? And I agree that this singularity thing is a bit much, and having an interplanetary civilization is a bit much when we can't even sort out our own civilization now, right? And who's going to stand for your vision of the future? The Chinese, the Indonesians, the Russians, the Nigerians, the South Africans, the Congolese, I mean, everyone's going to just suddenly stand for it. They're going to get it. You're going to take a black pill or a brown pill or a red pill or a clear pill, and boy, you're done. You went on the internet, you found the right blog, and your brain's been set straight, reset, and now you can think clearly about how to achieve something better for the human race, or just my team, my tribe, my nation state, my state, whatever. So I don't get it. I want to get it. I want to understand certain of the values. I do understand. I have nostalgia for tradition. I was a Japanophile. I love Japan. I'll never be Japanese, but when I was young and I was there, I loved it. It was a fascinating culture. I got tired of it after a while. It's just like your old elementary school. When you go back to it, the bathrooms look so small, and the gym looks so small. Everything looks, diminished, because you've grown and moved on and learned new things and seen new things, and maybe you've grown up a bit, Going back to Japan is like that for me now. It just isn't some fascinating, exciting place. It's kind of stuck. But my nostalgia is there for it, and my fantasy of what Japan was during this Tokugawa shogunate or the Meiji Reformation or whatever. I remember when Ireland was just a poor, wet country, with lots of farms and stone walls. And you're drinking Guinness and Harp Lager and chasing your childhood sweetheart and holding clammy hands when you're watching a film at the cinema. But now, obviously, something has to give, because it seems to me there are a lot of people on all sides, whether you're a postmodernist or some brand of radical feminist or some brand of the right wing, because there's so many different factions and they're all at war with each other. And it's vicious because now you can get at anybody you want to get at through the internet. So nobody's safe, If you have an idea, thought, or opinion and you want to put it forth, even have a good faith conversation about it, you're going to get attacked by somebody. So, yeah, herding cats, everybody, can anything cohere and coalesce into something that makes sense for enough people that we can actually get something done? I don't know. Or maybe we are living in the best of all possible worlds and we're just stupid little whingers complaining about everything when we're living at the best possible time in human history. And the future is pinker Aryan, bright. I have a lot of sympathy for an open society. I'm cosmopolitan in the sense that I'm open to other cultures and people, and I don't mind watching them mix, but I also appreciate people's culture and I don't want them to be diluted and washed away, So in the future, what's it going to mean to be Irish or French or American? Who knows? Because certainly in the past, it changed a lot. Just as new tools and technologies changed everything, so did wars and ideas. Not just the printing press, but the ideas of Martin Luther and so on. So yeah, when was it ever pure? When was it ever stable? Maybe every once in a while in a given place and time you had 30 years of peaceful, enlightened leadership from a benevolent king or whatever. And things would change for various reasons, and it is complex. Complexity, science, and so on isn't an excuse, or complexity isn't an excuse for being anti-traditional. I'm not anti-traditional, but it is complex. There's a lot of factors at play when things change and when things evolve and transition. There's a lot of liminal this and paradigm shifting that all the time. Throughout history, I just don't see. I don't know if the Roman Republic, for all its hundreds of years, was paradise. I'd love to go back to the Etruscans or whatever and see what it was really like. Please let me be a fly on the wall. What would it be like to be a Chinese person, hundreds of years ago? I don't know. But for most of us, we were ignorant peasants, slaving away to survive, to make a living. And most people born died. If you're going to go back to your past lives, you probably didn't live past 5 years old in most of them, if you were born human and not born a cockroach or something else. So, I don't know, you look to all these ancient books and thinkers of the past and present, trying to make sense of things and then develop your own philosophy and metaphysics and ontology and epistemology and whatever. And you just wind up in the same cycles, in conflict with lots of different people. And now we can have lots of silos and bubbles where we can feel safe and secure in our way of thinking about the world, and forget that there's so many other people out there who think we're batshit crazy, if they knew what we were thinking. I'm used to that anyway, because I'm the kind of person that can change and learn and shift his point of view. But at the core of my being, I still feel like we have to understand the difference between scientific understanding of how things work, technology, tools, how businesses work under different conditions, and so on, and what identity means to people in a traditional sense, on and on and on. And we have to understand that these things must and do coexist. And if we can make it easier for them to coexist and collaborate and support one another, we might have a chance to move forward peacefully. The other alternative is this, and this is unfortunately what I think is going to happen, is that all of this mad postmodernism and mad extreme, exploitative business practices that don't take into account externalities and second, third order effects and so on, and nuclear weapons and all the other existential threats that Hagens and Schmachtenberger are concerned with. If we don't find a way to deal with these things, we are going to crash in a bad way. So give it a couple more generations, or even just one more generation, and we're going to be in such a bad situation that you don't have to bring about your Bronze Age. We're going to go back to it. Circumstances will dictate that a small band of us is going to survive in the Arctic or the Antarctic. And we'll be back to this kind of almost extinction event where human beings, there might be only a few thousand of us left, coming from a couple of different mothers. Who knows, And then we'll have to evolve all over again, and who knows if we'll do better next time. The archaeologists of the future will dig down and find the e-waste and try to put together a narrative about it, If it's Moses or if it's Adam you want to go back to, or if it's Jesus or whatever, the archaeologists of the future will be piecing together the pseudonymous writings of themselves, writing about the e-waste that's ubiquitous around the world. How come we find the same shit everywhere? What was the world like back then? As opposed to looking for some Atlantis that supposedly had a whole bunch of technology that looks like rock and marble and shards of whatever, pots and whatnot, or obscure writing symbols. If God wanted us to wonder what E equals mc squared was, he could have written it on a tablet. But that's what happens. You turn your back and they're worshiping craven whatever images again, You let the kid out of your sight for half a minute and they start thinking that sex isn't a thing. There's no such thing as sex in terms of, boys and girls, reproduction, and so on. And so how do you manage to keep them all fit for purpose, for tradition? Stalin was an absolute ruler, and he had his clique. Most of them he killed, a lot of them he killed, but people tended to rally to him, and then at the end of the day it turned out that his science was bullshit. His scientists were just yes men, and that his world was fragile and deadly and not very productive, and so on. And so the next guy, of course, the Curtis Yarvin Nouveau Caesar, will be somehow better because he was born in generation X or Y or Z or something. Somehow what we're learning today is going to make him fit for it because the new right is on the internet now. Who in the world's going to stand for it? So, I don't know. I'm still waiting for the aha moment, reading Unqualified Reservations, and I'll keep reading it, hoping that when I scroll down another few inches, something's going to jump out at me that just makes me think that I have to pursue this further. Or I'll get to a point where I say, yeah, that's nice, but, in another 10 years it'll be something else. So we'll see. But there are things we should work at, and I think we can work at, across ideologies. We don't even have to say across nation states anymore. It's just like, yeah, I get it. You believe this, you think like that. That's fine. I'm a little bit different, but we really have to fix this. And there may be only one ideal way to fix this particular kind of carburetor. And all the other ways just won't work. So we're going to have to get together and fix it. Just like those reality shows where you're trekking across the jungle or Canada, northern Canada somewhere, and you realize that you hate this guy, but he has skills you need. So you better learn how to love him, because you don't want to lose him, because it means your survival. Maybe the world, maybe our friends across the world can agree that there's certain things that need to be done. How do we get to that consensus? That's what I'd like to know. Because the rest of it, yeah, you can take your time. If there's no existential threats, who cares? Maybe 100 years from now it all sorts itself out because of the wonderful efforts of the new right or whatever, the new special super precious left, or the whole, or the sincere people, or whatever it is. Yeah, so just tell me. I'm listening. Thank you. Buliam T. Out.